Hey everybody, this is Alan Ting, TEDx speaker, #1 bestselling author. And today in our Expert Series interview, we have this very special guest. She's also a very dear friend of mine. Her name is Jenna Dillon. She's an executive coach, a keynote speaker, a CEO of Executive Performance Institute for Coaching, or EPIC Coaching. She's also known as one of the top 15 coaches in LA since 2003 and 2004. I'm super excited to be talking to her about it and about her experience. What I love about Jenna is she is so committed and so passionate about empowering her clients to help them break through and create this exponential epic results. So without further ado, welcome Jenna.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so flattered by that beautiful introduction.
So today's topic is really about understanding glass ceiling, because I know a lot of my clients, we're all working professionals, and it's like, how do we progress in our career? What's holding us back? So I love to have that discussion with you today.
Wonderful. I'm excited.
So if I can just kind of dive into the deep end, right? So first question is, what is your definition of the concept of glass ceiling in a workplace? And how have you seen that impacted your client's career?
Well, and actually, I want to answer that with this, I'll call it a caveat for the listeners to consider as they're hearing this, and I'm assuming the rest of our conversation today, is this idea that how someone does one thing is likely how they do anything. So we might be talking about the workforce. That's my specialty. I'm sure you have talked to your clients in that way, and this can show up in everybody's other aspects of their life. So even if we talk about executives or whatever clients, I would encourage you all to think about how this could in any way apply to you. With that in mind, to answer your question, Alan, the glass ceiling concept, I am constantly amazed at the potential that we humans as a species has and have had. And with this idea of a glass ceiling, I would say it's when we aren't given the permission to have our desires and capabilities be seen and fully utilized. Simple as that. How I've seen it impact my own clients and their careers, oh gosh, I mean, that can show up in a number of different ways. When you look at someone's environment that they're in, they can be limited on them not being really seen on what their capabilities and gifts are, what their desires are. But I look at the extrinsic world of their environment, but I also look at the internal world of what's going on between their ears. And I think to myself, well, who put that person in that environment? They did, right? And so in essence, as odd as it might be to consider, in some degree, I find people don't often realize how they put themselves in a place where they, in a way, created that glass ceiling to exist for them in the first place. They might not have meant to, but they did it. And like I said, intentionally or unintentionally. Where that can start to show up as kind of signals or indicators is when they start feeling a sense of stress, discomfort, negativity of some sort. That can mean a dull, like boredom. That could mean a unsettledness where they're just feeling this gnaw inside because they know they can accomplish more and they haven't quite hit that potential, whether they can't figure out why, or they're frustrated that they haven't, or even like an irritation. It could be even with a colleague, right? It could be with their boss. And if you follow that breadcrumb, some of these things could even change into anger with an extreme, or if they're starting to feel a little drained at the beginning, and that can lead to exhaustion and burnout, right? So there's all these little indicators of where it starts and how it can then transpire into, oh, there's a glass ceiling here.
You brought up a couple of points, and I'd really like to explore this with you, right?
Yeah.
So as you're talking about this, I'm like, aha moment. It's funny, and especially in the workforce, the most competent person of the team gets the most amount of work. The most competent person on the team gets the most amount of work. Why do you think that is? It's because, well, management trusts you.
Yeah.
They trust you that you can perform, that you're a hard worker, that you're competent, that you can get the job done and successfully. And they put all the trust in you, hence AKA project managers, right?
Yeah.
And then you put yourself in a pigeonhole. You're like, yes, I'm doing great. I am competent. The next thing you know, like, you're getting all stressed out because instead of doing 40, 50 hours work a week, you're pulling 60, 70, 80. Well, I can't let my team down.
Yeah.
And you literally just pigeonhole yourself in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And even to add on to that, I find people who, even if they're doing over 40 hours a week, let's say 50, 60 hours a week, that's what they can accomplish in 50, 60 hours a week. If you gave someone else that same workload, they might be able to accomplish that in 80, 90 hours, right? So even the pace and work ethic is also another factor there too. But yes, absolutely. It's so fascinating. It's like you have a task. Who do you give it to? You give it to the people that's busy because they know how to get it done.
So you get pigeonholed into that busy work, and you get even more busy work on top of that. Yeah. And then the very thing that you're very proud of, like, hey, I'm a great executioner. I'm a great doer. I get things done. Guess who's going to get more work?
There are two sides to the coin. I love that you're pointing this out because yes, like you can build a reputation to be reliable. And I find one of the key things that is so important, if not the number one thing that I think is most important in leadership, is self-awareness, and to be aware of what's the other side of the coin that you have to your strengths. And to what we're talking about here, it's, like I can be reliable, I can get some work done pretty quickly and be dependable. And the other side to that is I can get pigeonholed, right? So yes, absolutely.
Now, the other thing I like to explore with you, because you started talking about this, there's the external world and there's also the internal world, the thing in between your head.
Yeah.
I know we're very competent people, that we're hard workers, we have great work ethics, but let's talk about what's in between our head. Tell us more about that.
I will go back to actually one of the things that I started off by saying is how somebody does one thing is how they do everything in most cases. And what is going on between our ears, our narrative on how we are seeing the world and positioning ourselves in it, and how we relate to the other things that we compare ourselves to, not just people, but things, right? Really matters. And it really matters how we navigate any situation that we're in. It matters how we feed and fuel our energy or drain it. It is the cornerstone of us reaching our full potential and being able to break through a glass ceiling or not.
And typically, what does that narrative sound like?
I could talk about how we could limit ourselves. I could talk about how we do the opposite. So we're so complex as humans, and yet we're also so simple. So there's like paradox here, right? How we perceive success, how we perceive failure, and how we perceive ourselves in either of those, right? We can have so many thoughts around, I'm going to be so determined, I'm going to get that success, because if I don't get that success, that means I would be a failure. But wait, there can also be, if I get too much success, there comes great responsibility, and that sounds scary as all get out, and that hasn't worked for other people in the past, and they get overwhelmed, so I don't want that for myself. So I'm going to stay in this window of, I'm going to be successful and not let anyone see any failure, because that's not acceptable in my book. And I'm going to be embarrassed if anyone sees failure in my book. So I'm going to be in this window, and then I'm going to feel really stuck in this window because I'm afraid of more success and I'm afraid of failure. So that can be a fascinating paradigm where there's one could say that is one glass ceiling, but as a coach, I see there's actually several glass ceilings there, because all of that big overarching glass ceiling is actually built on all these micro assumptions about how they've seen themselves in the world and success and failure, right? So which do you want to call a glass ceiling, right? We could just go to town on all of this, okay? And with all that I just said about the limitations, in order for them to have any of those limitations, there was also confidence. There was also this I really want this and I'm going to go after it. Right? There wasn't that. So there's also these beautiful, wonderful, encouraging beliefs that come with it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking about this, a lot of clients that I work with, the analogy I use is, as we're driving a car, we're stepping on the gas and the brakes at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's wrecking our lives. Mm-hmm. Right? And what it really boils down to, it's values. What do we value? On one hand, we value success. On the other hand, we value security. Mm-hmm. Right? So then where we run into a problem is, if you value success, that means that you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. Think about a startup, right? You're going to fail at some point, but you're going to recover and learn from some point. But if that's what you value, that's great. But then you also value security. Ooh, I can never fail. Ooh, failure means, very detrimental. The end of my life. Yeah. Now you have competing values. You're fighting against each other.
Yeah.
This is where the paradox comes in.
Well, and where, to what your point is too, where values, to many people, they will have these values and they won't even realize how they clash against each other. And I think that's where you and I get so excited about the work that we do, because we can help people detangle that so they can even realize why they're in conflict with themselves or the situations that they're in. Like, oh, wait, but if we can detangle this value around security, for instance, well, what is security, for one? And security in one way means that you're going to be it could mean that you're going to be insecure in another way. So you're not letting yourself win, are you? Right? And that's one little piece of a value, or if you're going to value success, yeah, great. All for it. Won't let you stop that. Great. So then does that mean you're not valuing failure? Because that could also contradict it and actually prevent you from success. So these are just very simple examples, but when we work with our clients, and I have had conversations with you about our work enough to know that you have experienced this, is we get to detangle and help someone understand all these micro details they didn't even realize they were blending and merging together that created a conflict within themselves. And it's a gift to be able to help people see that and become more clear of who are they really, and who do they want to become is actually the more important question, and what are those values that they want to align to.